Hey, good evening, and welcome to Buck Run Baptist Church Pastor Chat. It's a opportunity for us to engage in scintillating conversations with pastors of Buck Run Baptist Church. And man, I'm enjoying these. Sunday, when we had the Drive By Annie, so many people said to me, "I love Pastor Chat." All right, now I'm hearing somebody. That's not me. You did
There you
it.
go. It's
You
me.
did it.
It was me. It was me.
I was so proud of myself. I turned mine down tonight, and you did it.
I'm surprised that you heard it.
You're on my good ear. That's my good ear.
Well, it's on my bad ear, so
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, we are so professional around here. Just everything done just right, always, right?
There you go.
Well, as I was saying, Sunday, so many people said to me, "I love Pastor Chat." Folks told me that we watch everything that you guys put up, so it's why we do it. We really want to stay connected, and one of the best ways to do that is just engage in some good conversation with our pastors. And so tonight we have Dr. Wesley Noss. Welcome, my friend.
Glad to be here. Thanks
Oh,
for having me.
well, man, it's a joy to have you not only here today, but on staff here at Buck Run, one of our pastors. You and I have known each other a long time.
Long time.
I'm trying
Long
to figure
time.
out when we first met.
You had just gone from Ashland Avenue to Southern.
So around
And it was,
97,
to
98.
some sort of a convention meeting that
Yeah.
you and I was new to
Well,
Kentucky.
at that point, I remember the conservative pastors in the state would like meet, and we could get us all in a restaurant,
Just about. Yep.
and we weren't even invited to lead in silent prayer in those days. Remember? I mean,
I
honestly,
remember. I remember.
that's the truth. I was never asked to do anything in the Kentucky Baptist Convention until
Well, nobody from Southern was
right.
invited.
Until I got elected president.
Right.
I mean, that was funny, but the Lord's graciously changed some things. So we've known each other more than 20 years, and you are a West Kentucky boy.
Born and raised in Paducah.
Man, you don't get much more West Kentucky than that.
That's it.
I figured out, and being from West Kentucky is a pride thing, right? And anybody who lives to the east of you in Kentucky, you claim that's not really West Kentucky. Like, Paducah looks at, I grew up in Christian County. You guys go, oh, that's not really West Kentucky. We're West Kentucky. We look at Bowling Green and we go, oh, that's not West Kentucky.
No, that's Central Kentucky.
That's something else entirely. So your dad was a doctor?
He was a physician. He started out in doing surgery and OB work, and then had a family practice. As he grew older, he got rid of delivering babies and doing the minor surgery, and just ended up doing family practice.
And you grew up in First Baptist?
First Baptist Paducah. That's where I was baptized.
Was there a pastor that had a particular influence on you as a child?
I would say the one that probably I grew up with was John Wood, who I left First Baptist Paducah and went to First Baptist Church Waco in Texas. That's where he was from, and so he went back.
Were you
back
saved
to,
under his ministry?
I was saved under his ministry.
How old were you?
I was 13.
13.
And, my dad, I remember Harper Shannon was preaching a revival, First Baptist Paducah, and I'd been under a conviction of sin for several weeks. My parents had talked to me. John Wood had talked to me, and I knew what the decision that I needed to make, and just the conviction of my sin and the brokenness of my sin was so real. And in that revival service, the invitation was given, and I came down one side of the sanctuary. Did not know that the Lord was working in my dad's heart and life, and he didn't know what was happening to me. And he came down the other side, and we met there at the front in the altar, and we actually had the joy of being baptized together.
Wow.
And so it was a great time.
What a great thing.
Absolutely.
And at what point did you feel a call to ministry?
I felt a call to ministry when I went to Dallas. I graduated from the University of Kentucky with an accounting degree, business degree. Went to Dallas to work for Pete Marwick and Mitchell. That very quickly led to a job with Mobil Oil Corporation, and ended up being manager handling the offshore leases out in the Gulf of Mexico. And then I got involved in commercial real estate there in Dallas, and it was kind of a no-brainer. You can make all kinds of money, and
Yeah.
I was very successful. But during all
That
of
was
that
in
time,
the 80s?
that was in the 80s, and in that time, the Lord just continued to work in my heart and life. I was very involved in my church in Dallas, and served on various committees, and taught Sunday school. And through all of those events, God just continued to shape my heart. And I knew that I could be involved in secular work and do well with that. But Lord just really impressed upon me that this is what I really want you to do. And there was just a hunger and thirst to pastor that I couldn't get away from. And so in 1986, I surrendered to preach.
Okay, so you're in Dallas.
I'm in Dallas.
Were you at First Baptist yet?
I was at Park Cities Baptist there in Dallas.
Park Cities, okay. So did you go to seminary?
I went to Southwestern. That was the seminary that you would go to.
Yeah,
in those days.
At that time, like Southwestern was the one that was the most conservative. I mean,
Right.
there were professors there who were not as conservative, but
Oh, yeah.
Southwestern was
That
way
was the
more
one.
conservative than Southern at that time.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was. If you went to any Southern Baptist seminary, if you were conservative, you went to Southwestern typically.
And it was a great experience. I had closed out my real estate business and was heading to Southwestern. And at the time, they approached me at the church, and they said, "We've got a very strong youth ministry here, and we get all of these graduates out of the high school, but when they go off to college, it's like they vanish.
Mm-hmm.
And we're wanting to develop that ministry and would like for you to do that." And I was coming out of the business world, really didn't know exactly how to do ministry, but I agreed to do it. And we had a tremendous summer, and it grew a lot, and so they put me on staff there. So I went
At Park City?
At Park City. So I had the joy of having both the practical side of ministry as well as the theological education at Southwestern. So I was very pleased to have both of those.
Now, at some point, though, did you end up at First Dallas? Were you at First Dallas?
I never was at First Dallas.
I was thinking you were. Was
No.
Joan?
Joan was
I was
not.
thinking one of
No.
you guys was at First
No.
Dallas.
Now, I preached at First Dallas for O.S. Hawkins once.
Oh, you did?
Years ago.
Man, that's one up on me. I've never preached at First Dallas. And I'm pretty sure I won't be invited to. But, that's another story.
I understand.
So how did you and Joan meet, and where?
Well, Joan and I met there at Park Cities. She was a children's minister at Shades Mountain Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, and had done that essentially all of her adult life. She's very
Shades
equipped.
Mountain was one of the original mega churches. I mean, it
Right.
was a really large church.
Very large
And
church.
outside
She had a
there in
ministry of
Birmingham.
over 1,000 students there in that church, and
That's big.
came to Dallas in that same capacity. And I remember preaching on that Sunday night. I was up there in the pulpit, and I looked out in the congregation, and there was Joan. She was that new children's minister that we had on staff, and she was there. They were going to have a big reception for her following the service, but I had to go and catch a flight. I was going somewhere. I was doing a lot of speaking, outside engagements at that time, so I was fixing to leave and catch a flight, so I didn't have much time, but I looked out there at her and I said, you know, she just needs a friend, and I'm the one that could be that friend. And so I fully expected to introduce myself to her after the service, but she was escorted out early to go down and get ready for the reception that they were going to have for her. And I had to go to the airport, so I didn't get to see her that night. But a couple of days later, we were able to meet, and ended up that she actually in college had roomed across the hall from my sister. And
Really?
so we began to compare notes, and we had a lot of things in common. And we actually dated for about 11 months before we were married there at Park City.
11 months. That's
So-
respectable. You
so
know, I
she-
mean, not
as
too
long as
long.
it's inside a year.
Not too long. That's right. Not too long. Not rushing it. But how long was it before you thought I'm in love with her?
I would say probably after we had gone out on a couple of dates, 2 or 3 weeks. It didn't take long.
It didn't take long.
Didn't
Yeah.
take long.
Man, she's a jewel. You have
She is a jewel. I
just
just wish more people knew Joan. She is very incredible. She's
she
very
is.
gifted. She has just a heart for children and children's ministry. She's kind of like the Pied Piper for children. And until this year, she also was working at Lexington Christian Academy, dealt a lot with administrative responsibilities for the teaching staff there, as well as coordinating the lunchroom cafeteria. And so that was a big responsibility for her, but her organizational ability, her ability to teach children
Joan
and
is.
disciple children.
She's just incredibly insightful.
She very much.
She's able to see things and sum up what needs to happen very concisely.
She can indeed.
Now the two of you have two sons,
We have two sons, Matthew and Michael.
and they're how old?
Michael is 21 and Matthew is 18. Matthew will graduate from high school.
No,
However that's going to look this year.
See, I saw in the paper today that they were saying that most seniors said they want that ceremony no matter when it comes. They don't want it some alternative
Right.
means, online or mail our diploma. Does
It's
he feel
very
that way?
significant, and Matthew doesn't talk about it very much, but he does from time to time, and just the things that they're having to miss out on.
Yeah,
is
it's
just
another
really
one of the sad things. I mean, there's just so many things like that.
They're such a tight group of friends that he has, and he knows that here in a few months they're going to scatter.
That's right.
And so, this is kind of their last hurrah, and
Yeah.
it gets.
One
having
of the neat things, talking about high school friends, Sunday morning after the sunrise service, I got a Facebook message from a girl I went to high school with and have not seen since 1978
Wow.
that I recall. I don't think I did. If I did, it would have been only a year or so after. And she said, my husband and I, they live in Florida now. He's retired from the Navy, and she said, we just watched your sunrise service, and wow, how neat. So may the Lord keep those people in his life or bring them back around.
I think they will. They're very close and just a very tight-knit group, and so.
Well, so at what point did you start pastoring?
I started in '86 there with the college students, and we had a ministry of well over 1,000 students, and so Sunday morning we had essentially our own worship service, our own worship experience, and Park Cities, as you may know.
And you preached that
I preached
service?
that. It was a very contemporary service. Park Cities itself was a very high church environment, and so when we had this contemporary service, it kind of raised a lot of eyebrows, but they could not argue with the fact of how many students were coming, how many students were being reached and baptized, and it was just an exciting time.
That's neat.
So people saw the value of that, and not only the students, but their families as well. And we had students that would come in to Southern Methodist University, Dallas Baptist University, and then during the summer we'd have them come in from Baylor and colleges all over the nation.
Yeah, I would say, and of course, man, in the 1980s, there were a lot of forces that were happening. So in the Southern Baptist Convention, it was the fever pitch of what we now call the conservative resurgence.
Yes.
Conservatives were exerting their influence and attempting to every year elect a conservative president who would appoint conservative boards. And really, Dallas was sort of the heart of it in many ways. I mean, Dallas and Memphis. W.A. Criswell at First Baptist there in Dallas, and Adrian Rogers at Bellevue, Jerry Vines in Jacksonville. I mean, these were really the leaders. And, of course, Paige Patterson was there with Criswell at Criswell College and First Dallas. So you were right there.
I was right there in the middle of
that,
and
weren't you?
very uniquely, Park Cities was considered a moderate church. Jim Pleitz was the pastor there, and he was supposed to be elected as president of the convention, and that was the year that Adrian Rogers got elected, and so that started the whole resurgence movement. And Park Cities was very unique. You had about half the congregation that was just fiercely conservative, half the congregation that was very much on the moderate to liberal end, and how the two ever meld, I don't know, but they did. And of course, I was one of the conservatives on staff there that they needed to have on
So
staff.
your pastor ran against Adrian Rogers?
Ran against Adrian Rogers. As a matter of fact,
Somebody asked me recently who ran against him.
I'll tell you this story. At the very height, you had Jim Plights and W.A. Criswell that were just almost arch enemies. I mean, even in the editorial pages, there were all kinds of barbs that were being thrown. And Alton Reed, who used to pastor at Park Cities, was the president of the annuity board at that time, passed away, and his funeral was at Park Cities. And you had both Jim Plights and W.A. Criswell preaching that funeral service. And that was just, that in and of itself. I think a lot of people came to that funeral just to see what would happen.
Somebody had to die to get those two together. Huh?
And so they contacted me and they said, Wes, you're the conservative guy on staff. W.A. Criswell is over there in the chapel. Go over there and you can be the host to him. I walked over there and he was by himself. And so we had a conversation for about an hour and a half, just the two of us. I couldn't have ever arranged that, but it just a God thing. And we were talking, and towards the end of that conversation, he said, my dear brother, I've got one word for you. Run! And so that I will always be grateful for my experience there at Park Cities. It was a great time of growth. It was a great time of challenge.
Okay, I don't. Maybe you don't want to answer that. Did you go to the convention that year in '79?
I did not go in '79. My first convention was in '85.
'85. So that's when Adrian ran the second time.
That's when he ran the second time.
He ran the second time. I got you, because he only ran. So he. Okay, I got you. Now I've got the chronology right. So here's my question: Did you go that year?
To '85, yes.
Yeah.
That was my first year.
Who'd you vote for?
Well, I voted for Adrian.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine feeling torn.
Well, the
lines were pretty clearly
everything
drawn.
was so orchestrated back in those days.
They were.
And you had a lot of maneuvering around, but it was just my conviction.
'85 though, was that in Dallas?
That was in Dallas.
And that was the year W.A. Criswell preached that incredible sermon.
That's exactly right.
If we live or if we live or die.
If we live or
now
die.
Look, do yourself a favor. If you want to hear a sermon,
absolutely,
look up on the internet. You can find it. It's out there. If We Live or Die by W.A. Criswell. And it was his call to Southern Baptists to come back to their conservative roots, and his comparison to what they call the Baptist downgrade controversy in England with Spurgeon. Just brilliant. I remember the great line from that. He's talking about people trying to stay in the middle. He said,
a skunk by any other name is still a skunk.
Yeah, that's right. And that's right. He was great. I loved W.A. Tanya and I got to have him in our home for a week, actually in our church for a weekend, and go to dinner with him, and we spent a day going to antique stores with him, and I've got so many stories just from that one weekend. He was larger than life. He went to Southern Seminary and pastored First Baptist Church in Mount Washington. That's where he met Betty, his wife. She was a Kentucky girl, and he told me that story. It's fascinating guy. So how did you get back to Kentucky?
I was really ready to be a senior pastor, and that wasn't going to happen at Park Cities, though Jim Plights, I will be forever grateful. Even while I was a seminary student, he had me preach for him on Sunday mornings. I did a lot of Sunday nights. I did virtually Wednesday nights, particularly during the summer. And in that size of church where you have thousands of people, even your
And that's a
Wednesday
lot
night,
of trust he put in you,
a lot of
especially
trust.
if you guys were sort of theologically on different pages.
We were, but
But he knew you weren't going to hurt him.
we never made that an issue in our relationship. We might have some discussions. I remember the first time he had me preach on a Sunday morning was Sanctity of Life Sunday, and so that's what Sunday it is. So I'll just preach a Sanctity of Life message. I did not know the beehive that I was fixing to kick over in that church, but
Really?
I kicked it over, and even the head of the ERLC, he had just retired, was there in that
So
worship service.
Foy Valentine?
Foy Valentine.
Yeah.
And he came up, and he had some good
It was
words.
called
He had some.
The Baptist Joint Committee then.
Right,
wasn't it?
right.
Yeah,
And
or-
had
yeah.
some words for me.
Wow. I mean, most people don't know this, but back then, prior to the conservative resurgence, the Southern Baptist Convention actually passed a resolution supportive of abortion in some
Right.
cases.
Right.
And that just shows you how very, very different it was.
Oh, it was
and
totally
there really
different.
was something to rescue it from. And, I mean, it was a battle, man.
And so if you were a conservative in those days, in that environment, uh, I'm grateful because that's where, it just really sharpened me.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that was going to be a cultural thing or just something where you were going to get along just to get along. I was ordained in that church. In my ordination, I didn't think I was going to be ordained. But
Really?
you had guys in there that were on both sides of that issue, and
Really.
so it was.
Where was First Baptist Paducah in that back then?
First Baptist Paducah, I think it was a conservative church, but it very easily began to drift. But that was more of a pastoral leadership after Bob White left. It just really kind of made a theological shift and started into a decline there.
Well, there were a lot of churches back then that were, like in Kentucky, their people were very conservative people, but their pastors, particularly because they graduated from Southern Seminary, aligned with the left wing of the SBC, and you just had a lot of that. That's why it was so important to reclaim those seminaries, because when you're training the pastors that are going out there into the churches, you're going to have a tremendous influence on the churches in the state.
I remember coming to Kentucky. Of course, I didn't know all of the makeup of Kentucky, but there were battles to be fought in several churches. I was the moderator of our Elkhorn Baptist Association, and in that role, you had to go and moderate a lot of the very contentious business meetings, and they were all over a theological issue where you might have a liberal pastor, but a more of a conservative congregation, and
the
vice
Elkhorn
versa.
Association back then. Well, so what year did you come back to Kentucky?
I came back in '94.
In '94, and you became pastor at
Lebanon Baptist down in Lebanon, Kentucky.
and that was in the Elkhorn Association?
No,
Oh.
that was in Central Association. When I came to New Hope in Versailles.
And that was what year?
That was in 2001.
Okay. Well, man, of course, when I was at Ashland Avenue on staff in the 80s, Ashland Avenue had been in the Elkhorn Association. In 1970, withdrew because that was 1970.
Right.
They said it's too liberal for us. You had, I'm not making this up. Here's a little bit fascinating history that involves Buck Run. So the pastor of Central Baptist Church in Lexington, Central Baptist literally had like Native American Worship Day. They had Sacred Text Day, where they honored all these sacred texts, the Quran and all this stuff. And he had at one time had been pastor here at Buck Run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Gerald Howe. Yeah, he was pastor here at Buck Run. And wonderfully kind man, always very kind to me. He and I got along fine. We were just totally opposite theologically. He came to our building the day we moved in our building. He and his wife came.
That's exactly right.
So
right.
you had Central
that.
Baptist, and you had several others that were like way to the left. You had a bunch of sort of middle of the road churches, like I would say, Ted Sisk at Emmanuel was very conservative personally, but he had elements in his church that were not, and Ted aligned more with, like when the conservative resurgence happened, politically he aligned more with the left than the right, even though I think he was personally conservative. You just had a lot of stuff like that going on, and you were moderator there during
Right.
some of that.
Right. And so it was a very interesting time, and
Yeah.
but yet, when you look at my history, it's just interesting how the Lord kind of prepared you all through those years in Dallas to come and be able to
Yeah.
help navigate through these waters.
I want to tell a particular story about you. Most people do not know. You are so incredibly loved, respected, and honored in the Kentucky Baptist Convention by your fellow pastors. And I'm trying to remember what year it was that a bunch of us asked you to run for president of the KBC. Do you remember what year was that?
It was the year that I had cancer, and that
Exactly.
was about 7 years ago.
So we wanted you to be president of the KBC, and that was everybody's plan. And not long, right? I mean, it was just I don't know, a month or two before the annual meeting, you got cancer,
Right.
and thought you needed, rightfully so, to give your attention to getting well.
Right.
And so we had to scramble to find somebody, and by the grace of God, you went through that episode with cancer.
I did.
That was your first
My first.
of two times, all right?
2 times. That's exactly right.
And what's it been like just having cancer and finding how to use that for the Lord and trusting the Lord in it? And
Well, it was. There's several things that you learn. I remember when I was sitting in my office and at my church in Versailles when the doctor called and told me that I had cancer, that it was a high grade, that it was fast growing, that it was the kind that guys die from because there's really no any kind of symptom, and I wasn't having any kind of symptoms. And when he told me that, I told him, I said, Greg, you've got somebody else's chart. You've got somebody else's report. And he said, no, it's yours, and we need to deal with this. And it was just like, kind of getting kicked in the gut. It's just kind of unbelievable. Cancer happens to everybody else. I've been to the hospital hundreds of times to see people going through surgeries. But now it's me. And I can tell you very quickly, there was just a wash of calmness and peace that surpasses all understanding. And so my deal with the Lord was, Lord, you don't have to heal me for me to know that you love me, and I'm going to trust you. And
he
I'm
proved
going to
that
walk
at the
through
cross,
this.
didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. And so, but it brings a lot of things into focus.
I'm sure.
I learned there were a lot of things that I was giving a lot of time and attention to that just really didn't matter. Those that are nearest to you, that you love the most, that's where your focus wants to be. It gave me a greater passion for the gospel message, and a greater urgency in that matter, because I knew, my time could be very limited. And so I remember going through all of that surgery. I had gotten home that week of Holy Week, and so here I was sitting at home Easter, not being able to preach, not really being able to move around very much. Joan and the boys went to church, and they were having a great time celebrating Easter, and there I was at home. But I mean, I even got up and went out in the backyard, and we have a horse farm behind us, and there were some horses out there, and I just, had to preach a little bit and just say, he has risen. They didn't respond, but, I'm kind of used to that. I've had church members that didn't respond, but, it was just a real special time, and it was a time where I just found myself just weeping just over the amount of love and grace that God had
Yeah.
displayed to me.
Well,
And so,
you did it well. Your faith and confidence in the Lord was just evident. Uh, you were at New Hope in Versailles for 13 years,
13 years.
and and when you left there, we'll just leave it at it wasn't a great circumstance. It
It
wasn't,
really wasn't.
you know,
They were confronted with, biblical preaching and commitment to missions. And, I think churches of that size have to make that decision whether they want to move forward with that or not.
and when you left there, I was really delighted to ask you to come here, and you've been here at Buck Run now
6 years.
6 years. I
Hard to
was,
believe.
yeah, but the way I dated is before this building, and so I know it was before we were here, and uh, you you have, first of all, as our pastor over pastoral care, what you do is so incredibly important, and furthermore, you follow two of the greatest men I ever knew and had the pleasure of working with. Ken Underwood,
Right.
who was pastor at Glens Creek for 25 years. Then he came here and did it. And then Wallace Kent, who pastored, I forget how long he was at Crestwood, a lot of years. The highway over there
Highway's named
is
after him.
named after him. And so, man, you're in great company, and you have certainly kept that incredible, rich tradition here at Buck Run. You do such marvelous care. I just want to say, as the senior pastor, it really only works when you delegate something. It really only works if people see that person in that role as competent and loving and caring, and so that they don't go, well, no, I want to see the senior pastor. I want to see someone. And man, when people see you, you warm their heart, you brighten their day. They feel your love, your care, your Christ-likeness. You really are marvelous at what you do. You remind me a lot, and this is about as high a compliment as I can give you, of my dad.
Wow.
My dad was very much like you, and just his intense care for people, and you show that very well. I know that so many of our people have been blessed by you. Just even in this, I think one of the hardest things about this is you're not able to go visit people.
Oh yeah, I'm very much an extrovert. Joan is an introvert. I'm the extrovert, and just not being able to get to people and
It's
to
awful.
hug them.
It's awful.
Funeral down in western part of the state about 3 weeks ago, and it's 10 people max, and but you can't hug people.
No.
You can't be with them,
No.
and not like you want to be. You can't go to the hospitals or nursing homes like you would be accustomed to doing, and
No.
so everything has to be long distance, and that's hard.
But you do a great job keeping up with people. Every week you give us reports. You're great at, I really, really appreciate the way you keep me and the other pastors informed. That's so important that all of us know, not just you. And I love the way you give us reports and keep us updated on people, and our deacons, you
Sure.
inform them. So we really do our best to get the word out and stay connected, and you do that extremely well.
Well, it's so refreshing to be in a church that's so strong, that's so healthy, that's so equipped. It really is a huge blessing, because sometimes we might have 2 or 3 issues that hit all at once, but the pastors can go, the deacons can go, and as long as people are being cared for is the important thing
That's
to
right.
me, because I deal with people that have small children, I deal with youth, I deal with college students, a lot of college students that I'm working with in pastoral care, and a couple that are struggling with addictions that you work
Yeah.
with. So much of what I do is outside this building,
Yeah, well,
and then
that's right.
grief recovery, and helping young couples as they're preparing for marriage.
Well, God has gifted you, and He's gifted us with you, and we're very, very grateful. And I just want to say what a joy it is to have a friend and a brother on this staff with me, and I appreciate you very much. We, along with Dave Parks, we're the old guys.
We're
We are
the old guys, but
we're the vulnerable population. Now we call ourselves.
But I told the other pastors, we were talking a few weeks ago, and I said, they were all talking about their various issues that they have going on. I said, well, you have cancer a couple of times, and man, I'm strong, I'm healthy, I have no no issues at all.
It has a way of narrowing your focus, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, let me do lightning round.
All right.
Twinkling of an eye round, I like to call it, and just ask you some random questions and see how you might answer. Okay. Your favorite movie?
I would say probably the three would be The Godfather. All three of those.
You like three?
Together.
You like three?
Three is okay. It took me 2 or 3 times to kind of watch it.
I'm with you.
To get it, but I got it.
Just when I try to get out, they
dragged
pull me back in. Yeah, yeah.
Joan hates it. She hates the movie.
Yeah, they're great movies. I'm a Lawrence of Arabia has edged out The Godfather for me now, but hey, great choice. So your favorite song from your youth? You have a favorite song back there or a singer?
I always enjoyed the Carpenters. They were kind of a mellow.
You mellow
song.
rock guy?
Pretty much. I mean,
me
I'm
too.
kind of all over the map when it comes to music.
Yeah.
But,
back in the 70s, the hard stuff made me feel a little too rebellious. So I like the singer-songwriters, the mellow stuff. Karen Carpenter's voice is just like the smoothest
it's
ever.
just very smooth, very smooth,
absolutely.
very, very unique, very distinct.
Very, very great. Do you have a dream car? It's like there any kind of car you just think, boy, that's
Dream
it.
car, very simply, it would be a Ford F-150.
Really?
That's just kind of my vehicle.
All right. And best place you've ever been? Any place that you're like, man?
I would say probably, honestly, would be the Holy Land, just because it was being in Israel, it makes the Bible come alive. If I could have a dream trip, it would probably be to take you and Tanya and Joan and myself to the Holy Land for about a month with no tour, just
around,
just to go around
that's
and be able to get.
That is sort of a dream of mine. Well, look, I've got some gifts that I have brought you.
All right.
And then speaking of the Holy Land, there are a couple of them that have something to do with that. So here's what I got. All right. First of all, this just came out, and this is by Philip Ryken and Phil and Graham Ryken, both of them, father and son. And this is the Literary Study Bible. And it is really great. I looked through it, and I want
thank
you
you
to
so
have
much.
that.
Appreciate it.
You'll enjoy that. All right? Okay. That's sort of the serious gift. And so this is an eye mask, and it's a little... It's fancy. Anyway.
It kind of matches my socks. I'm
does?
hoping that everybody at home is
All right, and this is
noticing those.
a Herschel York special.
All right.
The pocket square.
All right, very good.
And here's a Trusted for Truth leather bookmark.
Wow.
Southern Seminaries. I know you're a graduate of Southwestern, but
Well, I graduated from Southern too. That's
that's
where
right. You did
where I
your
got my
DBA.
doctorate.
That's right. Did your DBA?
So I'm good.
That's right. You are good. And these are bombas.
Oh.
Very special
Wow.
sock.
Absolutely.
Compliments
There you
of
go.
Delta Airlines.
All right.
Okay, look. This is 3,000 years old.
Wow.
It's just a piece of a pot. But here's what I love. Every time I go to Megiddo, I can find stuff just walking along. and that's the lip of a pot, or a handle
Wow.
from a pot, and so you're talking 3,000 years old, or 25,
Yeah.
about 3,000
Right.
Megiddo, and just to say, you've got something old.
Very good.
All right,
Very
there's
good.
something
Thank
older
you.
than us.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
This, hey, I've got one of these. This is a little bag that Templeton Tours, when I go to Israel, it gives us to keep our notes in. It has been, I've got one, and I've got a little Pitt Minion Bible that I keep in it.
Good.
When you travel, if you put your suitcase in stuff, the pages always get bent up. That's great for keeping your
Wow.
Bible
Thank you.
from. And here's a journal. Record your thoughts during COVID-19 days. They're going to be something to look back on.
There will be many.
And here's a fountain pen. Now, do you recognize this fountain pen?
Looks like a Mont Blanc.
It does. It looks exactly like a Mont Blanc. I will tell you, it comes straight from Canal Street in New York, Chinatown. It is a knockoff.
All right.
But so it's not a real Mont Blanc. It is anyway. It looks like the real thing, and it writes fine. But you can keep it in your pocket, and people go, "Oh, Mont Blanc." No, it's from Chinatown. It's a knockoff. But
Will it leak on my shirt?
all fountain pens will leak on your shirt. Just
All
know
right.
that. All fountain pens will do it. Tanya, if she's watching right now, she can tell you, yeah, they'll all leak. So anyway, Wesley, man, it's a joy to serve the Lord Jesus with you and the folks of Buck Run. We love you very much, man.
We
and
love it.
Thanks
We
for
love
being
it here. And
Well-
I've been involved in a lot of churches and staffs, but the staff here is just unique in a lot of ways, and just the cohesiveness and the love that is here. And I'd do anything for any of you guys.
I pinch
We love
myself
being
every
here.
day. It is a joy to serve with every one of our pastors. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. It's been a joy to have this conversation. And Lord willing, I will see you on Sunday morning. If not before, don't forget, 10:45 is our worship service. Share it. Invite other people to watch us online. And Lord willing, we will see you then. God bless.